You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Practice podcast, where we focus on the business and human sides of equine veterinary medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk with Dr. Kelly Zeytoonian about hiring your first associate. Dr. Amy Grice, business consultant and former equine practice owner. The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you in 2025 by CareCredit. Dr. Zeytoonian earned her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from the Virginia-Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine in 2009. She served as a co-chair of the American Association of Equine Practitioners Practice Culture Subcommittee and is also a co-founder of the Sustainability and Equine Practice Seminars. Dr. Zeytoonian established an equine ambulatory practice in the San Francisco Bay Area in 2013 and has since grown the business to include 6 doctors and 2 locations. She completed her MBA from the University of North Carolina's Kennan Flagler School of Business in 2020. Now she uses her experience in veterinary medicine and business administration to empower veterinarians and technicians to create or maintain a career and culture tailored to their individual needs. Welcome, Dr. Zeytoonian. It's so good to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it's a question that people ask me all the time, and I'm sure they ask you too. How can a busy solo equine doctor know when it's time to hire an associate? And it's maybe not when you're so exhausted you can't get out of bed.
Well, right, exactly. So I think that key word that you just said is when they're busy, right? And, in my mind, I think it's important for solo and really any practitioners to think about what their dream job looks like or their dream schedule looks like when they're considering this. And, if you're thinking about it and saying that your current workload is compromising your ability to go and ride your horse or pick up your child from after school activities or hit up your favorite gym class, read your favorite book, leave the county lines, on the weekend, I think that's the time that you really need to be thinking about hiring additional help. I think that way of looking at it really speaks to being ready to add someone to help you honor your values and kind of honor your mission as an equine practitioner. There's also, of course, somebody's probably listening to this and thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but there's the financial component. How do we financially support hiring somebody?
Right. I mean, when you think about it, if you only have the demand in your practice at this point for one very busy veterinarian and you bring on another person, that means that you're going to have to grow the practice. And sometimes, people, I will ask someone, so do you think you're doing the work of 1.5 veterinarians right now? Because you sort of have to build it to a certain point and be able to step back and still be financially doing okay, I've found. What do you think?
Yeah. So maybe that's something, to kind of consider as you're thinking about it, is like, okay, well, where do I even start? How do I even know what those numbers are? And I'll briefly share, some of the newer averages that came out from the AVMA AAP economic report. These are so helpful. It showed an average salary of $130,000, and that's for all practitioners, not new grads. And certainly factors like location within the country, hospital setting versus fully ambulatory, age of the practitioner, solo versus multi-doctor, all impacted that exact number to a degree. But I think that's kind of a number to have in our minds, especially if you're thinking you're not going to get somebody straight out of school, but there's a fellow practitioner in the area who's been practicing a while. That will help you kind of on that gradient to know where to start. to speak to new graduates, the senior survey that was also recently published showed that their average starting salary was about $94,000. So that's kind of our range or where we might want to be thinking about it. And if you're then saying, okay, well, I have to pay them that. Well, maybe I have, 94,000 or $130,000 of business that I can give them. Okay, well, that's great, but we have to do some quick back of the napkin math and factor in cost of any additional equipment that you need to purchase to bring them on, stocking of a new vehicle, equipment that you're going to put on that vehicle, the payroll taxes and all of the benefits that you're going to be paying them. And of course, every situation is different. So, I'm going to give you some basic numbers that I use as my, kind of framework, but it will vary. So don't hold me to it in your particular area. But the revenue that you need to just kind of break even, if you will, not see a blip in profitability of the practice. You need around $170,000 to $225,000 of new revenue for that new hire in order to cover all of their expenses, and on the higher end of things, to cover the equipment purchases, the truck, the x-ray machine, the dental, etc. So that's, if you can look at it and say, well, I am ready to give up some of that work and take a little bit of a pay cut to hand over that revenue, or I've been turning down business left and right because I just can't keep up. And I think if I had the person, that revenue flow and cash flow would be there. Those are some kind of good starting points for you from a revenue perspective.
The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you by CareCredit. CareCredit keeps equine veterinarians at the heart of care by providing horse owners with simple, budget-friendly financing options. By helping to bridge the gap between cost and care, CareCredit supports healthy financial relationships between veterinarians and their clients. Clients have a flexible way to pay over time for all types of care, and practices get paid in 2 business days. It's a payment experience everyone can feel good about.
I wonder sometimes when this question is given to me, I often ask about whether there is staff, whether they have an assistant or a technician. Do you want to speak to maybe an in-between step?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, anybody who's listened to anything that I've spoken about, technician utilization is like my baby. I feel so strongly that, especially right now when there is such a scarcity of equine practitioners available to work, we have these able-bodied, highly educated technicians who can step in and really be a wonderful in-between. And so when I was a new practitioner and was solo, I, really felt like I needed to hire somebody new, but I had that hesitation from a financial perspective of whether I could support them. One of the things that I did first was hired a registered veterinary technician. And I will certainly say in the state of California, I am able to send them out to do a lot more than other more restrictive states. But I think it was incredibly helpful. It gave me a day to catch up on management. It still continued to produce revenue, which could then be turned over to a new associate once I hired them. It got me using and utilizing my equipment every day of the week, which helped to pay that off more quickly and then have the cash flow to add somebody new. And the other thing that it did, which I think was sort of a softer benefit that I didn't even realize I was doing at the time, but has really been advantageous, is it got clients used to seeing somebody other than me showing up at the barn to help them, which helped with that transition of adding somebody new.
Absolutely. Jumping back to associates, what do you think are currently the expected benefits? Like what kind of package are people looking for? Because to be competitive and have somebody say, yes, I want to accept this offer, what do they need?
Yeah. So in my experience, seeing what's out there, going on the career site on AAP to see what's offered, and then reviewing employment agreements. I think the big ones that we see, continuing education stipend, your state licensing fees, AAP and state VMA memberships, health insurance, retirement contributions. And then there's, the whole list beyond that of additional benefits, like a signing bonus, housing assistance, loan repayment, etc. And, the first ones I shared, those are pretty common. Like you're going to see some degree of support, for health insurance, for continuing education, etc. But in that same AAP study, less than 10% of practices were offering the signing bonus, the housing assistance, daycare support. So, if you're looking to set yourself apart and be attractive to, somebody that maybe otherwise is going to stay out of the equine space, those would be some considerations, as some of those outside of the box options.
And paid maternity leave.
And paid maternity leave would be,
That's a big one to set yourself apart.
another consideration. Yeah. Or even, paid is fantastic. I think just allowing mothers to leave and feel safe taking as much time off as they need post and then coming back to work in a tapered fashion. I myself came back 1 day a week and then 2 days a week and then three, and we've done the same for our associates. And I think giving everyone that grace and those timelines that were specific to them versus these hard milestones that they felt like they were pigeonholed into, can be really beneficial as well. I wanted to say too, as you're thinking about it, AAP's compensation committee came out with a beautiful chart of all of the different benefits that you might be considering offering, or somebody who's looking to get hired can utilize to put, pen to paper and see beyond just that salary, what are the other benefits, financial benefits that they'll be receiving. So, if somebody here is listening that's considering new jobs versus somebody putting it out there to hire, don't just look at what that starting salary is, because there are some practices that are going to be way more robust in the benefits that they offer. And many of those come pre-tax, which can benefit everyone. So utilize that resource to really compare apples to apples as best as you can with job offers.
Absolutely. Like that total package number matters, because what
Absolutely.
looks like a great salary may not come with a lot of the other benefits. And when you think about, say, paying for your professional liability insurance, or all your licenses or your memberships or your CE yourself with after-tax dollars, wow.
Yeah,
It's a lot of money, and you can't write it off when
it
you're
adds up
an
incredibly
employee.
quickly.
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
adds up for sure. So if you're lucky enough to get someone who's ready to come and be an associate for you, what sort of recommendations would you have for a practice owner or for an associate to make sure that their transition into the practice is as successful? Like, how do you set them up for success?
Yeah, really, it's starting before you even hire someone, right? It's creating appropriate client boundaries and creating those foundational protocols within the practice so that when the new vet starts, they have a framework to work from, and clients have a framework to work from. I think the worst thing that we can do is hire somebody new and then have our clients circumvent the front desk, or, calling our numbers or our cell phones directly, asking for assistance or help on our day off, rather than taking on the opportunity to meet this new associate and give them a chance to really provide that support and help. So, one of the examples I already gave was hiring that RVT and having them go out and see those appointments beforehand. I think owners were used to seeing somebody other than me during those visits, which really made a big difference. The other thing that our practice does is we offer days and, a day of the week that a client prefers, or a doctor, but not both. So just kind of creating some of those A/B options so that the client still feels like they're choosing, but they're not getting everything. They're not going to get Dr. Zeytoonian at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, the 15th of whatever. But they might get me 3 days from then at, 2 p.m. or, but maybe the associate's available sooner. So I think, setting those boundaries and really sticking to it. And then when you run into blips or when you run into discrepancies and maybe, the approach to care, facing it head on, having those conversations and really backing up your associates and showing your support for the decision making that they've had, even if there's a behind the scenes conversation about, you might have said X, Y, and Z, or I think in this scenario, adding this particular medication would be appropriate because, doing those things behind the scenes really helps to, again, solidify that associate as an expert in the field, just like you, and shows your level of respect for the work that they're doing and your confidence that they are going to represent you in your practice just as well as you would.
So as an associate coming into a practice, because I bet we have some listeners who are, about to do something, new job or first job, how can an associate integrate themselves into a practice most successfully? Because it can be tough.
It can be really tough. We have a new hire. She started 2 weeks ago, and she wants to succeed. She also has the stressors of just being a new practitioner and figuring out the what behind the cases, and then you have to add in the who and the interactions that you're having. So I think for new associates, you're super smart, you made it through vet school, you've passed your boards, you've got this brain power. Have confidence and faith in yourself, and be as prepared for the known things when you go into work and go into your appointments. Take a look at the schedule in advance. If you're seeing a laminitis case, refresh your memory on common treatments and common questions that you might receive, because you can control that part of the day. What you'll have less control over or less, tacit knowledge will be how each individual wants to be communicated with, what the different barn policies and politics are. And so ask those questions, in the car ride to the barn, is there anything that I need to know about this particular barn? Is there a particular point person that I should really be directing the conversations to? Do they, favor having all of the options listed out for them, or are they one who wants just, gold standard delivered right away? Don't be afraid to ask those questions and really.
And don't forget to ask what the gate code is.
And don't forget to ask the gate code. I mean, the most stressful thing for me going to new barns is like, how do I open and close the stall doors?
Yeah.
So, just some of those little things, don't be afraid to ask it. And certainly don't be afraid to expect your hire, your employer, to provide you with that support and that tacit knowledge to really help you succeed, right? Like, it is not your job to go and try to discover everything on your own. It is your job to be a sponge and to take in as much information as you can and to ask as many thoughtful questions as you can. But demand that of your employer. Make sure that they're helping you to succeed. It behooves everyone to really take that time.
That's excellent advice. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today about associate hiring one, being one?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think, this was a little bit focused towards that solo practitioner adding on their first associate. And I hope that there's more than just the solo practitioner listening and those multi-doctor practices. It's always a good time to be considering hiring somebody new, right? To be bringing along another veterinarian, even if the business isn't quite there, you can kind of just help support and move along, and provide mentorship when things aren't quite as busy. Waiting until you are having that oh shoot moment of we're down in numbers and we don't have the support that we need. You've waited too long, in my opinion. So My practice kind of always has a job opening out there, and for the right fit, we will make the schedule and the numbers work to bring somebody into the team. The equine industry is tough in so many ways, right? The natural inefficiencies of mobile practice, the physical demands of working with horses and in the elements. To me, though, it's such a rewarding space to work. And if we're going to keep attracting new graduates and retaining our current practitioners, it's really time for us to start veering away from that old and dangerous adage of this is how we've always done it. This is what our pay has always been. This is what our schedule's always been, blah, blah, blah. Like, though, that's the most dangerous thing that we can say in equine medicine right now. It's time to start thinking outside of the box, being open to alternative schedules, alternative compensation structures. And when we can start doing that, we can really start running our practice instead of letting it run us.
Very well said. It is so true. We need new paradigms. We need that thinking outside the box because it's so important for the horses that live in this nation to have somebody to take care of them. And, right now it's a little tough to bring people in and keep them in. But practices like yours, Dr. Zeytoonian, have been at the forefront of making those changes. So thank you for joining us today and describing some of that. It's always great to have you on. And thank you all for joining us for the Business of Practice podcast. And a big thanks to our sponsor, CareCredit. And to all my listeners out there, be brave, embrace change.